wanted to provide kind of a brief snapshot of the architect of the Capitol's, journey with respect to the Enterprise Asset Management Program and specifically about the ISO certification itself. And with that, just a quick background about the agency itself. The AOC really is a unique agency, a mission of serving Congress and the Supreme Court, preserving America's capital and inspiring memorable experiences. However, the really mission for the agency is much more expansive than that, and the facilities, much of which are historic, are important, to the world and symbolic. And so the facilities that are cared for, it's over 18 million square feet of facilities, as I mentioned, mostly historic, 570 acres of of land and infrastructure and utilities, including a Capitol power plant, and daily building occupants of 30,000 and upwards of 3 million visitors annually. Um, so quite a broad mission and a diverse, I think you'll say, it's a set of assets across the agency as well. So composed of 9 jurisdictions with unique mission and clients across the Capitol complex and beyond, from the Capitol building to the House office buildings, Senate office buildings, Botanic Garden. As I mentioned, just a really diverse set of assets and a historic and symbolic context as well. Every agency, either objective or initiative, starts with some sort of a problem. And I think, like a lot of large agencies, federal agencies, large private organizations as well, often the organization can be siloed, and there might be a difficulty in collecting consistent information across the agency or organization, and articulating that into whatever it may be, a budget justification or a need for something. And I think that was realized through just some differences in jurisdictions. Some, not necessarily a jurisdiction doing something bad, but something that may be just inconsistent from one to another, that made it difficult to articulate some of these things. And so several years ago, there was an organizational restructuring to try to look at alleviating and mitigating that. And as you know, to also not only bring consistency to jurisdictions and operations and capital planning, but also to really look strategically at the deferred maintenance backlog, as that had been increasing over years. And so with that, there was also 6 strategic objectives or initiatives that were created, one of which was an enterprise asset management program. And really, that really is intended to get at the root of driving consistency and addressing the deferred maintenance backlog. And with that, just to kind of further expound on some of the program goals, really looking at this vertically aligned set of policies and procedures that govern these major capital investments, and implement industry leading best practices for life cycle facility management, which is aligning to ISO 55000 and also achieving certification as well. And so the program itself was really initiated through 3 phases, and is of course ongoing. And it's interesting in kind of sharing these experiences and collaborating with other agencies that have either looked to implement an ISO compliant asset management system, or gone for certification itself. There's a lot of similarity into these overall phases, where to start from a maturity assessment that might align with the Institute of Asset Management best practices to see where the agency organizational is, and then governance and foundations and building upon that and filling in gaps from that maturity assessment. And so I think it's just funny that there's been a lot of, not necessarily funny, maybe it shouldn't be surprising actually that there is a similarity and perhaps the strategy to try to implement a program like this. However, I think the one unique part about the Architect of the Capitol was that there was really a drive, an initial objective to identify a scope of the asset management system, and bring the asset management system into ISO compliances and take the system through audit and certification, as to build a framework that could then be expanded to the rest of the agency. And sort of that's where we are now currently, sort of in between that phase 2 and phase 3. Phase 3 really looking more of a tactical implementation and really an expansion of data standards as well. And so, once again, I think this type of figure is something that I've seen a lot in other presentations, and it's really the initial push, the initial drive to build out an ISO compliant asset management system, with focusing on initial, governance, steering committee, what's the scope of the asset management system, developing core documents and processes, such as policy and manual and operation and maintenance procedures, and then other supporting documentations as well, such as the internal auditing process, which is something we're actually going through at the moment. And so just to build upon that, the governance structure itself that has been developed is cross-functional governance structure, starting with the architect himself, with a steering committee really responsible for oversight and direction of the asset management system, as well as the asset management objectives, and keying in on ensuring that they're following the direction that is intended. And then a working group, much more of the tactical arm of the governance structure, looking at developing documents, managing key documents, and reporting on performance as well. And then an enterprise asset management office, which is really sort of my role to try to facilitate this across the agency. And also the EAM objectives for the agency. So, as you can see, really right at the heart of the initial objectives for the asset management program, the intent was really to achieve this ISO certification. And one of the reasons for that is to really understand what it takes to achieve that. What does it mean? What's the level of effort? So we can kind of truly understand what the impact is going to be on expanding a program like this, and how we want to manage a certification as well. So really, what's that level of effort? What does it take? What are the key players involved? And do we have confidence in the framework that's being built out for ultimate expansion? And then some of the other key objectives that you can see there, having a consistent facility data, as well as developing asset management plans, and then there's some other objectives that are being tracked as well. And so progress to date, really the push for that certification was, wanted to identify a scope, and take the gap analysis that was initially conducted, fill in gaps associated with the clauses and aligning with ISO 55001, and then take through audit and certification. And that ultimate timeline was about 18 months, a little more than that, and really during 2023 was really initial standing up of the asset management system and approval of the strategic asset management plan and asset management plan for the John Adams building, part of library buildings and grounds. And then ultimately achieving the certification, concluding the audit and certification, and earlier this year, for the John Adams building. And so the process itself was, stage 1 concluded in, at the end of last year, and then we went through the stage earlier this year, and really that identification of the scope was a key piece of it as well. And there were a number of reasons why the John Adams Building, which is the second oldest Library of Congress building right on Capitol Hill, and that was identified as the initial scope for a number of reasons. One, through the maturity assessment, it was identified that library buildings and grounds maybe had a higher degree of maturity associated with asset management practices, just in general, whether it be awareness or knowledge, just through that entire maturity assessment. That appeared to be where we might want to start with the asset management system. And then the John Adams Building, part of the EAM initiative was also to advance the facility condition assessment program from primarily a deficiency-based assessment into aligning with an ASTM uniformat and an inventory for more of a condition-based assessment and data collection. And the John Adams Building was the first pilot building that went through that procedure, which is now part of the base, the standard practice for the agency. But so those things coming together, both the maturity piece as well as the data that we had to really develop a coherent asset management plan, drove towards that initial scope. And so really this figure here is just kind of depicting at a really high level what the scope is and the key processes and enabling items that really are a full part of the scope of the asset management system to try to bring that cross functionality together. And then I think ultimately the program itself has had a number of benefits. However, for the certification itself specifically, I think two of the key ones really are the confidence in the asset management system. Now we have a degree of confidence in the framework that was built out at the John Adams Building for expansion, and we understand what it takes to go through the audit and the certification process, and really the clauses that are required to really to align to. And so I think that confidence is helpful with developing the lessons learned and the framework for how expansion will take place. And then also the audit preparation itself bridged silos just by its very nature, bringing in the right folks as part of the development of the asset management system, and were key inputs and drivers into the audit preparation and certification. By its very nature, was collaborative and helped with, I think, bridging the silos for developing the asset management system. So just a number of kind of key takeaways from this initial focused scope of the asset management system. And I think we also are very cognizant that this is really a first step. I think it's a big milestone, but it's really just a first step. Expansion and maturity is going to take place over several years and have its own inherent challenges. And then finally, just to conclude, I know one thing that the Enterprise Asset Management Program has also been looking towards and getting some key insight from is the Strategies to Renew Federal Facilities report, that came out not too long ago. And I think we've really looked at these recommendations and tried to make some strides for these recommendations, particularly the first four.